The courtroom was charged with tension, dense as the fog at dawn. Absolute silence reigned, broken only by the occasional creak of an adjusting seat or the discreet clearing of someone's throat in the gallery. Everyone there knew that this was no ordinary hearing. In the center of the room, seated in a wheelchair, was Ryan Collins, a war veteran whose gaze bore the marks of battles that went far beyond visible scars. His uniform, impeccably aligned, reflected the cold light of the chandeliers, while the medals on his chest shone like memories of times he could never forget. Next to him, sitting upright with an attentive posture and a fixed gaze on the judge, was Rex, a Belgian Malinois police dog. His dark eyes swept over the room, alert to any strange movement, any invisible threat. He was not just a war dog. To Ryan, he was the only bridge between a devastating past and a hopeful future. The judge, a man with a neutral expression and rigid features, examined the documents before him with the patience of someone who knows he holds absolute power over another's fate. Sergeant Collins, the records indicate that Rex is property of the United States government. He has been assigned to new military operations, and protocol requires that he be immediately delivered to the corresponding unit. The words were spoken with administrative coldness, as if Rex were disposable military equipment. Ryan clenched his fists, anger and pain warring within him. He took a deep breath before speaking, trying to keep his voice steady. Your Honor, Rex is not merely a tool of war. He has saved my life more times than I can count. He belongs to no one. He is my partner, my companion. The judge raised an eyebrow, but maintained his impassive gaze. Are you suggesting that military dogs should have human rights, Sergeant? The question drew a few muffled laughs from the gallery, but Ryan did not smile. His eyes turned to Rex, who remained seated, disciplined yet with his ears slightly perked, capturing every nuance of the environment. I'm suggesting that Rex has loyalty. He has a heart that feels. He pulled me from the rubble when I was hit by an explosion. He shielded me from gunfire. He warned me of ambushes. If you were in my place, Your Honor, wouldn't you relinquish someone who has saved you so many times? The ensuing silence was different from the one before. Now, it was not just bureaucratic tension, but an emotional weight. Some in the gallery averted their eyes. Others seemed to swallow hard. The judge cleared his throat and shifted in his chair. The matter here is not sentimental, Sergeant. The Army has clear orders regarding the possession of its service animals. Unless there is proof that Rex can no longer perform his duties, he will be transferred. Ryan felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. This couldn't be happening. Rex was not a mere animal to be relocated. He was family. He was the only constant amidst the chaos. He opened his mouth to argue further, but before he could utter another word, Rex abruptly stood up. The hairs on his neck stood on end, and he began to growl, a low sound laden with warning. His ears leaned forward, his eyes fixed on some point in the courtroom that no one else seemed to notice. The change in the atmosphere was immediate. The security officer beside the judge instinctively reached for his holster, but Ryan raised his voice. No, don't draw your weapon. Rex isn't attacking. He's alerting. The judge narrowed his eyes. Alerting about what? Ryan swallowed hard. He recognized that behavior. He had seen Rex react the same way countless times in combat zones. Whenever imminent danger was near, the gallery murmured, some exchanging glances, others beginning to shift restlessly. The atmosphere changed rapidly. Rex took a step forward and let out a sharp, forceful bark that echoed through the hall like thunder on a moonless night. His paws dug into the floor, ready to act. Ryan's heart raced. What was Rex seeing that no one else could? The judge looked to the security officer, clearly expecting him to do something, but before anyone could react, Rex bolted toward one of the spectators. There were screams. The man, dressed in a well-fitted gray suit and with an expression that had been neutral moments before, now looked as pale as wax. Suddenly, his hand reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. It was enough. Rex leaped. Amid the ensuing chaos, Ryan tried to advance in his wheelchair, but panic spread quickly. People rose, chairs scraped on the floor, some ran backward, others screamed in confusion. And then a boom. A single gunshot echoed through the courtroom. For a moment, everything seemed frozen in time. Rex was on top of the man, holding his arm tightly, preventing any further movement. The security officer drew his own weapon and ran to detain the suspect. Still breathing heavily, Ryan looked at the scene before him. On the floor, next to the subdued man, a revolver had fallen. Rex continued to hold the aggressor, not letting go, his eyes fierce, his chest heaving. The judge, once so rigid and impenetrable, now stood open-mouthed, pale. He was the target. Rex had just saved his life. The ensuing silence was almost deafening. The security officer handcuffed the man and began to lead him out. The judge, still processing what had just happened, finally looked at Ryan. His gaze was no longer neutral. The sergeant took a deep breath, a single certainty etched within him. Rex had just proven, once again, that he did not belong to any government. He belonged to the one who always protected him. And that, no one could deny. The courtroom still bore the impact of what had just transpired. The judge, once impenetrable in his rigid stance, now displayed signs of disbelief. The sound of the gunshot still seemed to echo in the space, even though absolute silence had taken over the room. Rex remained still, his eyes fixed on the handcuffed man. The hairs on his neck were still raised, as if he knew that the threat had not completely passed. His chest heaved, and even with the security officer's order to stand down, he did not look away for a moment. Ryan Collins still held the wheelchair's armrest tightly. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind raced. What had just happened was no coincidence. Rex never alerted without reason. Whenever that instinct manifested, something was about to occur. The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "Officer, take that man in for immediate interrogation. I want to know who he is, what he was doing here, and why he was armed." The officer nodded and dragged the suspect down the corridor, while everyone in the room still tried to absorb the events that had unfolded before their eyes. Ryan looked at Rex and gently stroked his head. "Good boy." The dog let out a low sigh, as if finally able to relax. The tension gradually diminished, but the battle was far from over. Minutes later, the judge temporarily adjourned the hearing. The chaos in the courtroom needed to be controlled before the session could resume. Some people continued to whisper among themselves, others remained silent, but no one looked at Rex the same way again. He was no longer just a military dog. He had just saved a life before dozens of witnesses. The government lawyer, a stern-faced man named Mark Reynolds, approached the table where Ryan was still seated. His look was laden with irritation and distrust. "Does this change anything?" Ryan asked, keeping his tone firm. Reynolds crossed his arms. "It changes a lot, but it doesn't mean you've won." Ryan frowned. "You just saw what happened. If Rex weren't here, that man could have shot the judge. That proves he is more than just a simple military asset." The lawyer sighed, massaging his temples before replying. "What it proves is that there was a thread inside the courtroom. But that does not change the matter of Rex's ownership. The rules are clear. He still belongs to the army." A bitter taste filled Ryan's mouth. "If he were on the battlefield and had saved you, would you still say he has no right to choose where he belongs?" Reynolds did not answer immediately. He looked at Rex, who was now seated beside Ryan, alert to every movement around him. The lawyer seemed hesitant, as if grappling with an internal dilemma. But before he could say anything, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor. The security officer returned, a serious expression on his face. He looked directly at the judge. "We need to speak privately, Your Honor. We've discovered something important about the suspect." The judge exchanged a brief look with Ryan and Rex before nodding. "Let's go to my office. I want all the details." He stood up and left, followed by the officer and Reynolds. Ryan remained where he was, but something inside him said that the truth about to emerge would change everything. The minutes dragged on, as if they were hours. Ryan tried to remain patient, but his instincts told him that something was wrong. Rex, too, was restless. His dark eyes swept over the room, alert to anything out of the ordinary. When the door to the judge's office finally opened, the men who emerged had expressions even heavier than before. The judge stopped before Ryan, folding his arms. "We need to talk. Now." Ryan nodded and followed him, with Rex walking by his side. Upon entering the office, Ryan noticed that the atmosphere was even tenser than before. The judge wasted no time with formalities. The man who tried to shoot me was no ordinary person. He was an undercover agent. Ryan frowned. Undercover from where? The judge exchanged a brief look with Reynolds before continuing. From an extremist group that has been under investigation for months. They call themselves Dark Order. A chill ran down Ryan's spine. He had heard that name before. It wasn't just any group. They were mercenaries specialized in silent missions. Professionals in disappearing without a trace. And why would that man be here trying to kill you? The judge rested his hands on the table. That's what we're trying to figure out. But there's one detail that might interest you. He paused briefly before continuing. This man had been on a mission in Afghanistan, and the records show that he had contact with your former unit. Ryan felt the air leave his lungs. The connection was there. It wasn't a coincidence. Something from his past had returned to haunt him. He looked at Rex, who was now growling softly. The dog sensed that something was amiss. And if there was one thing Ryan had learned in his years of combat, it was that when Rex sensed danger, it meant that danger was already lurking. Ryan ran a hand over his face, trying to gather his thoughts. This can't be a coincidence. Did he know I'd be here? The judge nodded slowly. We believe so, and that may mean your life is in danger. Ryan laughed humorlessly. My life has been in danger many times. That's nothing new. The judge sighed. This time it's different. This time, the target may not be just you. Ryan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He knew exactly what the judge was implying. If someone truly wanted to hit him, they would go after the one thing that mattered more than his own life. They would go after Rex. The judge looked at Reynolds, who now appeared even paler than before. Given what happened today and this new information, I need to reconsider my decision. Ryan held his breath. Are you saying you're going to grant me custody of Rex? The judge pressed his lips together. I'm saying I need more time to evaluate the risks. But until this threat is eliminated, Rex will remain under your protection. Those words meant much more than they initially appeared. Ryan knew what they implied. The battle was not over yet. It had only just begun, and now he and Rex were at its very center. Night fell like a shroud over the city, bringing with it the feeling that something lurked in the darkness. Ryan Collins drove his pickup in silence, the headlights cutting through the empty road that snaked among the distant fields near the courthouse. Rex sat in the passenger seat, ever vigilant. Even without any command, his keen eyes surveyed the surroundings, absorbing every detail as if predicting that something was about to happen. Ryan still tried to process everything he had learned earlier. The connection between the shooter and his former unit wasn't a coincidence. That attack in the courtroom wasn't random. Someone wanted to silence him. Or worse, the judge had made a temporary decision, allowing Rex to stay with Ryan while the threat was investigated. But Ryan knew that wasn't enough. If the Dark Order wanted something, they wouldn't give up so easily. Ryan's destiny was no longer confined to his small apartment in the city. He knew he needed to disappear for a while, and there was only one place he could go: the cabin. The old wooden building in the middle of the forest had once been his refuge, a safe place where no one would easily find him. But this time, he wouldn't be running. He would be waiting, and when they came after them, he would be ready. The road ended at a stretch of dirt path winding into the forest. Ryan turned off the headlights and drove only by the light of the moon. The engine rumbled softly, muffled by the chirping of crickets and the rustle of trees around him. Rex shifted slightly in the passenger seat. His ears pricked up, sniffing the air. His instincts never failed him. Ryan noticed immediately. Did you sense something? The dog emitted a low, grave sound, laden with alert. Ryan didn't question him. If Rex was wary, he should be too. Gripping the steering wheel tightly, eyes scanning the dirt road ahead, he knew they were being followed. There was no doubt. The question was, how many were there, and when would they attack? The cabin finally emerged among the trees, isolated in the midst of the forest. Nothing but absolute silence surrounded it. Ryan parked, got out of the vehicle, and released Rex. The dog immediately began to circle the perimeter, sniffing the air for signs of intruders. Ryan opened the door, stepped into the rustic interior of the cabin, and switched on a lantern placed on the wooden table. The place was just as he remembered: an old stone fireplace, a few dusty bookshelves, and a precision rifle hanging on the wall. It was enough. He turned to Rex. "Do you think we have company?" The dog stopped by the door, ears perked, eyes alert. Then a sound: branches breaking outside. Ryan froze. His military instincts screamed within him. They were here. The veteran quickly switched off the lantern and silently moved toward the window. The forest seemed to engulf the cabin, but he knew he wasn't alone. Rex growled softly, muscles tense. He knew what was about to happen. Then, the first shot pierced the wooden wall. The explosion echoed through the forest. Ryan instinctively ducked, drawing his weapon. The cabin was under attack. More shots followed. Splinters flew as the wood gave way under the impact. Ryan took a deep breath. He maintained control. He had faced worse situations before. He looked at Rex and gave the only command he needed: "Go." The dog dashed out through the side door, moving through the darkness like a living shadow. Rex knew what to do. Ryan cocked his gun. The battle was about to begin. Outside, the forest transformed into a silent battlefield. Rex slipped between the shadows, his eyes gleaming in the dark. He didn't attack like an ordinary animal. He hunted. The armed men moved between the trees, using the environment as cover. But no matter how well they tried to hide, nothing escaped Rex's keen sense of smell. The first enemy barely had time to realize what hit him. In a precise leap, Rex sank his teeth into the intruder's leg. The cry of pain sliced through the night. The man tried to shake him off, but there was no escape. Rex did not let go easily. Taking advantage of the distraction, Ryan fired at another assailant. The shot was precise, hitting the second attacker in the shoulder. He fell to the ground, his weapon sliding away. The fight was not over. There were still more of them, and Ryan knew this was just the first wave. For a few seconds, the forest fell silent. Ryan knew that was the most dangerous moment, the pause between attacks. Then a voice emerged from the darkness. "You still fight like a soldier, Collins, but you can't win this war." Ryan frowned. The voice was not unfamiliar. He slowly stood up, keeping his gun pointed toward the forest. "Show your face." Footsteps echoed among the trees. Then, a silhouette emerged under the moonlight. Ryan felt the impact of a memory before he could even process the scene before him. The man who stepped out of the darkness wore a dark tactical uniform, had a short beard, and scars on his face. And Ryan recognized him, because he had once fought alongside him. Derek Carter? The man smiled, a humorless smile. "It's been a long time, old friend." Rex growled, still in an attacking stance. But Derek didn't move. Ryan gripped his gun tighter. "So, you're part of this? Are you with the Dark Order?" Derek tilted his head. "Things change, Collins. You should know that." Ryan felt his chest burn with anger. "Not that much." Silence stretched between them. Then Derek took a step forward. "I'm going to give you a chance. Surrender the dog. Forget this, and we can let you leave here alive." Ryan laughed humorlessly. "You know that's not going to happen." Derek sighed. "I expected you to say that." The click of a gun being cocked echoed in the forest. The battle was far from over. It had only just begun. The forest was heavy with tension. The silence was only the prelude to chaos. Ryan Collins kept his eyes fixed on Derek Carter, a ghost from the past now revealed as an enemy. The moonlight outlined his scarred features, while his men emerged from the shadows, weapons raised, ready to finish the job. Rex did not move. He no longer growled. He merely stared at Derek with wild intensity, as if he knew that this confrontation would be decisive. Ryan held his weapon firmly, feeling cold sweat trickle down his temple. "It doesn't have to end this way, Derek." The other man laughed dryly. "It's already over, Collins. I'm just here to collect what is ours." Ryan's eyes scanned the scene. 3 armed men, Derek in command. They had the advantage. But having an advantage never guaranteed victory. Ryan knew that, and so did Rex. The first shot shattered the illusion of stability. Ryan dove backwards, dodging a bullet that splintered the bark of a nearby tree. His mind switched to battle mode. No hesitation, no fear. Rex bolted through the undergrowth, moving like a living shadow. His instincts were sharper than any weapon. Ryan pivoted, aimed, and fired at the first enemy. The shot struck the mercenary's shoulder, and he collapsed with a pained groan. But that did not stop them. Derek shouted orders, and the other two quickly moved to flank Ryan. They knew what they were doing, but Ryan also knew. He grabbed a fallen branch and hurled it against the dense vegetation to his right. The noise distracted one of the men, a fatal mistake. Rex leaped from the shadows and struck the aggressor on the side. A heavy impact, a stifled cry. The man fell. Now only two remained. Ryan quickly rose, firing at the last mercenary. The shot was true. The attacker fell, leaving only Derek standing. The leader of the Dark Order did not retreat. He didn't even seem surprised. You've never lost your precision, Collins. But don't be mistaken. It isn't over yet. Ryan raised his gun. Yes, it's over. Derek smiled. A smile that dangerous men make when they know something others do not. Then, the click of a gun echoed behind Ryan. Ryan froze. He felt the cold barrel against the back of his head. Someone was still there. The forest silence was replaced by the sound of his own rapid breathing. Derek stepped forward, satisfied. You thought I'd come alone? Ryan held his breath. Rex had not attacked. If he hadn't, it was because he knew there was still a chance. Ryan closed his eyes for a brief second. Then he moved. Quickly. Precisely. He lowered his body and spun, knocking down the attacker who had been behind him. Before the man could react, Rex lunged. The sound of teeth clashing with flesh merged with the enemy's stifled cry as he fell. Now everything came down to Derek. Ryan pointed his gun at him. The former ally raised his hands. Yet his eyes showed he was unafraid. You're not going to shoot? Ryan gritted his teeth. Say that again. Derek maintained his smile. You're not like me. You're not going to pull that trigger. Ryan didn't reply, because he knew Derek was right. No matter what that man had done, Ryan was not an executioner. But that didn't mean he would let Derek escape. The sound of sirens cut through the night. The judge had sent reinforcements. Derek looked around. He knew he was done. But before the police could reach him, he let out a hoarse laugh and stepped back. Until next time, Collins. Then he turned and ran into the woods. The police fired after him, but the forest swallowed him up quickly. Ryan lowered his weapon. Derek would escape. For now. But one thing was certain. He would return. And when he did, Ryan and Rex would be waiting. The sun began to rise on the horizon. Ryan watched Rex lying beside him on the cabin's porch. The dog was tired but alert. He ran his hand over his companion's head. You never fail, partner. Rex let out a low sigh and closed his eyes. Ryan knew the fight was far from over. But, for the first time in a long while, he wasn't alone. And he never would be again. Rex was not just a military dog. He was loyalty, courage, and the last line between darkness and light. Because someone who chose to fight for him found a new destiny, alongside the one who truly loved him. Now, the choice is in your hands. Like, share, and subscribe to carry this message forward. Together, we can inspire more people to recognize the value of animals, protect those who protect us, and ensure that every four-legged companion has the home and respect they deserve. Because heroes come in all forms, and some walk on four paws.